Rebel-Hearted Radio Show, the perfect place to set rules, obligations, and expectations aside when you tune in and reconnect with your wild side. Meet your host, intuitive badass, healer, and coach, the original Rebel-Hearted woman, Lisa Freed. Turn imperfect action into traction and step fully into the power of who you are meant to be. Now here she is, the badass healer herself, Lisa!
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It is Lisa Freed here for the Rebel-Hearted Radio Show, and I have myself an amazing guest. I'm so excited to have her joining me. Her name is Julie. Julie, how do we say your last name?
Balderrama, or if you want to have the correct pronunciation, you can roll your R's and have some fun with it, and it's Balderrama.
Ooh, that sounds spicy.
Right?
I like it a lot. So I am so grateful to have you joining me here today. And I know that you have a really amazing bio that I wanted to share. And for whatever reason, it's not letting me look at it. So we're just going to make something up, which is, I got to meet you on the interwebs. I think via Periscope is how we first started connecting.
Yeah, I think so. I think I caught something of yours that was like, huh? And started stalking you. So
I love it. Well, for those of you guys listening, Julie is a self-love coach who passionately believes you are awesome. In fact, lots of times if you're in her group, she tells you that you are fucking awesome exactly as you are. She guides you to remember you're awesome so that you can have a body you love, relationships that feel connected and fulfilling, and live with purpose so you can experience joy and freedom. How awesome is that?
Yeah, give me some of that.
Yeah. Woo, woo. So, tell me, I love this because I ask you, give me 5 questions, but I'm not even going to get there yet. Tell me how it is that you got started in this whole self-love biz. What's your story?
Oh, yeah. So, we end up guiding and teaching what we've been through, what our journey has been. And so mine started, well, I have to go back and preface this. I've always been a seeker. I've always been a learner. I like to learn new things. I like to explore different, subjects and from everything. I mean, I have a degree in theater. I love astrology. I mean, so everything. I've always been a seeker. But I did find myself at a point in my life after I had my daughter, when she was about 18 months old. I was overweight and I was isolated. I didn't really have a community. We had chosen to live out in the country, which was beautiful. I got to be connected with nature, but it was also very isolating. And didn't have any kind of self-love practice, much less a self-care practice, and was depressed. I was really depressed. And so just so happened that my aunt sent me an email, and she didn't even know where I was emotionally. She just sent this to me because she was excited about it. And she said, "Have you ever tried Zumba?" And she sent me a link, and it looked like so much fun. And I'd had a gym membership for a year that I'd never used, but I went because I was super excited to go try Zumba. It looked like a lot of fun. So I would say that my self-love journey sort of started there. And once I started to pay a little bit more attention to myself and what my needs were and what my wants and desires were, I could start to make some different decisions that actually ultimately led me to feeling more joy and freedom in my life. And then also, sharing what I had learned with my friends and with my family, and then eventually going, oh, this is really valuable. I could make a living with this. And so I did.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. But you know what surprises me most of this story is that you liked Zumba.
I know, crazy, right? I have always loved to dance, and I'm not really trained in it. Like I didn't take ballet or any. Well, I did in kindergarten, but that was about it. When I was in college, I loved to go swing dancing with my friends. So I've always loved to dance, and it was just a way that I could move my body that I did not feel inadequate. So every other gym class that I'd gone to, I always felt like I wasn't particularly athletic growing up, so I didn't ever feel at home there. But I did feel at home dancing. And I totally stood in the back. I didn't stand where I could see myself in the mirror. I struggled with some of the steps sometimes, but for whatever reason, I was able to really just let go of the self-critic enough that I could enjoy moving my body. And that was a game changer for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I took Zumba one time. It was New Year's Day, 2015.
Memorable.
Memorable. I was so bad at it that the instructor said to me, she was like, if I slow this down any further for you, I'm going to fall over. Like,
Oh.
and she was like, she's like, I don't mean to make you feel bad. I'm like, you're not making me feel bad. I was laughing so hard. I had tears streaming down my face. I was having a blast, but I didn't have like a real love affair for Zumba. After that, so once was enough for me.
Yeah.
You're over in the same town as me.
I think too that, so I actually ended up, Lisa, not many people know this about me, but I actually ended up teaching Zumba. I loved it so much. And it is a lot like, every instructor gets to choreograph their own stuff. And so it can be a lot like looking for the right yoga teacher, So a lot of people say, well, I tried yoga and I didn't like it. But often it's about finding the style, finding the instructor that you click with and that you connect with. And so, you can decide to give it a try with somebody else or not. It's up to you. But yeah, it is, it can be like the instructor that doesn't really fit you can make it feel like, oh, this isn't for me. I've definitely been with instructors before that it just didn't, for whatever reason, our styles didn't jive and it was hard to follow, hard to do. Yeah. But finding the right instructor can be really amazing.
Yeah. Well, I never even thought of it that way. So thanks for reframing that for me. I'm definitely,
Sure.
I might be willing, I might be willing to give it another shot. You never know.
Awesome. Yeah. And at the very least, just move your body in the back and have fun.
Yeah, what I was worried about was the whole domino effect. Like if everybody was moving forward and I was moving backwards and like sending the whole line crashing down. Which, whatever, my best friend was next to me, so I trod on her feet a few times, but that was okay.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
So the reason for our show today is to talk about self-love versus self-care. Like, what's the difference between the two? Because I've never given that any thought either.
Yeah, this comes up for me a lot because I say that I'm a self-love coach and people have a little bit of difficulty wrapping their mind about exactly what that is. And self-care is absolutely... They do. And actually, I was going to, I know that I slipped in here in the last minute to be on this call, but I was going to actually talk to you like, can we talk about masturbation?
Okay.
But obviously we can. So... Yes, there are definitely people that, when I say that connotation comes to mind, and I've purposely not altered the way I talk about self-love because I do think that an important part of our self-love practice is seeking out pleasure in whatever form that might be. And I personally have had lots of transformation around my sexual energy as well. And to me, that's an important part of my self-love practice. I didn't used to be comfortable in my sexual energy, and that's shifted as well. But I think, one of the reasons why I wanted to explore this topic is because I happened to go into several Facebook groups last week and say, I'm committing this month to writing 4 blogs about self-love. And so I'm curious about what you feel challenged with in creating and sustaining a self-love practice. And there were so much good feedback, but there was like this, self-care versus self-love kind of vibe to it. And I found that there's even a charge around the word or the phrase self-love for a lot of people. Like that feels indulgent or it feels selfish to people, that word. And so they're more comfortable with the term self-care. So for me, this is just for me. And I am always up for a healthy exploration and discussion, and encourage anyone listening to also just think about, what does it mean? What do those two things mean to you? But for me, in my practice and how I work with clients, self-care is about those practices and exercises that we have in place that are basically caring for our mind, body, and soul, mind, body, and spirit. And I would say emotions too. You could put that in with mind if you want to. But like, what are those practices that we do every day? That we move our body. What food do we eat? How much sleep do we get? What practices do we do that fill us up spiritually? So that might be going to church or praying or pulling cards or whatever it is that aligns with you, that fills up that bucket of your spiritual energy. When we look at the mind, like what sort of stimulation are we getting with our mind? Are we, vegging out every night watching television, which I do sometimes, but I also love to read and learn new things and, ponder and wonder. So for me, that's that self-care practice. And it's a foundational practice for, I think, the bigger umbrella, which is this self-love practice. So it is, for me, self-love in the simplest way that I could explain it, is a practice of showing up for yourself in a radically loving way. So what does that mean? That means that when I maybe don't meet a goal that I set for myself, do I go into a place of, that inner critic voice getting triggered and, oh my gosh, I can't believe I failed again, or I can't believe that I didn't do this. I said I was going to do it. Or, gosh, I knew you weren't going to be able to do that, or whatever it is that your critic tends to say, right? Or do I come at this challenge or failure or whatever is happening and choose to show up and love myself, choose to show up and say, okay, let's explore this. Why didn't I show up for myself? What's going on? What parts are activated? And I'm going to choose to love those parts rather than trying to fix them, trying to run away from them, trying to squash them or push them aside. So that's kind of my take on it. But again, I'm always excited to hear what other people think. What do you think, Lisa?
Well, I love that you say to show up for yourself in this radically loving way, because it is so easy to, beat yourself up and be really mean over things. Mm-hmm. And so maybe self-love is maybe this is the journey that I'm on this year. And I know that it's always something that we're really progressing through, but lately I've really had to start showing up for myself in relationships that not working, but other ones that aren't working, and show up and be like, hey, I need this. This is what I need. In the most loving way, I need to put this boundary, or I need to move this friendship further outside of my inner circle. It needs to step a few rings out. And you're one of those people that you're part of my self-love practice, because I've set up the system with the bat signal for you,
right? Right.
And taking steps like that. So it's showing up for myself and sometimes in front of others or myself personally, asking for what it is that I need and really checking in to see if I'm capable of giving that to myself, or do I need to ask others? It's the
Right.
most loving thing that I can do for myself, asking others to hold that space for me if perhaps I'm struggling with it. Does that
Absolutely.
make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing about a self-love practice is that it is super nuanced. A lot of times when I'm talking, I'll do posts or whatever in the Facebook group, and I'll say, what are you doing to love yourself today? And most of the time we get these answers, right? I'm going to take a bubble bath, or I'm going to have a facial, or I'm going to take a nap today, which I just want to say, I think is an amazing thing. Yes, do those things for yourself. We need those things. We need to treat ourselves and pamper ourselves. But I also feel like there are other aspects of this self-love practice, like asking for help, knowing when asking for help is the most loving thing that you can do. It may not be the easiest thing that you do, and it may not be the most comfortable thing that you do, but it is the most loving thing that you can do for yourself. And so sometimes loving yourself is not comfortable or easy, right? Just like loving our kids sometimes is not comfortable or easy, or loving our spouse is not comfortable or easy in that moment, right? But that's the commitment that we made. That's the commitment that we signed up for and agreed to, is I'm going to love you even in the uncomfortable and hard, difficult, challenging moments.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So I know you've got your definition of self-love. I have my own. Everybody else probably has something that they can always add to the conversation. So we would love to be able to hear that in your Facebook group and that type of thing.
Yeah.
But what are some practices that have made the biggest difference for you personally? And then we'll go into with your clients.
So for me personally, I think the thing that has made the biggest difference is creating sacred space in my everyday life to turn inward. And what I mean by that, some people refer to that as a mindfulness practice. So that was a fancy way of me saying I have a mindfulness practice. But there are some key elements around that. When I say creating sacred space, what I mean by that is that time's non-negotiable. I don't schedule things over that time. I don't say, let me see where I can fit it in during my day. It is time that I schedule on my calendar, and it's non-negotiable. I do that practice every single day. And it is a time where I turn inward. And so you could call this a meditation practice, although different meditation practices do have different aims, I guess you could say. Your meditation practice is for clearing your thoughts. For me, this particular practice is tuning in. And I start out by doing a body scan. How does my body feel today? And without judgment, right? So I don't need to fix anything. I don't need to figure anything out in my body. I'm just simply checking in with my body. Hey, how are you doing? How do you feel today? And then I move from the body scan into a practice of loving presence, where I recall someone that is easy, or something. It could be a pet or a location. I just go with whatever pops up that is easy to love. I have a very expansive, loving feeling toward. And I take that same feeling and I turn it in towards myself. So I start sending that loving presence towards myself. And then I start sending it out into the world in general. And this is really about a 10, maybe 15-minute practice. There are people that swear by, I think there's a quote by the Dalai Lama that says, I practice meditation 20 minutes every day. If I'm really busy, I practice an hour.
Yeah.
So it can be like that. It can be, I have like a 15-minute practice, but when I'm stressed, or I'm super busy, I might take actually a little bit more time to turn inward. And that for me has been a game changer. It's been a practice that's made the most difference.
I was reading The Power of Positive Thinking by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. Have you read that one?
I haven't, no.
Okay, written in 1952. It's always been on my must-read list. Like, it's considered to be one of the greats. But I always thought, you know what? If I'm going to read this book, it could be challenging because usually language from 1952 is very different than here we are right now,
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I'm like, that's okay. I'm going to read it anyway. I'll read it anyway. And a friend of mine gifted it to me. So I sat down and been reading it. And in one chapter, it talks about when you're stressed, like there was a general who in the middle of the war would instruct his troops to just take that, like when things were really stressful and you got a second, you would ask somebody to cover you just to like,
Mm-hmm.
let your mind go blank for a second, because otherwise you're in it. And he's like, that's when you need it most. That's when you need that relief the most. That's when you need to take the break. That's when you need to just rest. And he's like, and yeah, it's crazy. In the middle of war, in the middle of everything that's going on, you need to just be like, okay, can I feel the sun on my skin right now? Can I, can I hear something or feel something or recall a memory that feels good and do that? So when you're saying like, when I meditate for 20 minutes a day, and if I'm really busy or really stressed or whatever, then it's an hour, right? The Dalai Lama said, like,
Right.
It's so important. And it seems against our current Western culture of like, oh, I'm way too busy for that. Are you crazy?
Right. Yeah. Which there's another quote by Lao Tzu, and I'm going to totally butcher it, but
I'll judge you. Don't worry.
Thank you. Awesome. But basically it's saying, to say that you don't have time is actually to say that it's not a priority.
Yes.
Yeah. And when we look at those stories in our head about not having time, like I was talking to, I actually teach Qigong and Tai Chi now, and I was talking to my class today about their home practice. And of course, I was asking what gets in your way of your home practice? And inevitably, I can always count on someone saying, time, I don't have enough time. How do I find time to have a home practice? And I said, well, I'm going to magically gift you extra time today to do your home practice. There you are. You have time now. And I said, so now what I want to know is, now that you know that you have this extra time in your day, I've given it to you, are you going to show up and go, now what? Like, do you have a plan for that time? Or are you going to be in that space and decide I don't know what to do, so I'm going to go and do what's familiar to me? And she said, well, I'd probably show up at that time with that extra time and say, now what? I'm not really sure what to do. And so I think making that distinction sometimes, right? Like, we have time. We create time. We have the capability of creating time. Sometimes that means we have to say no to things.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means we have to do a little bit of forethought and planning, but we do have time. It's how we choose to spend that time. And sometimes it's easier to make the choice to get on Facebook or to watch television or whatever. And that's fine. I have got nothing against that. I do that too. But if we're looking to incorporate these little practices like a mindfulness practice or a movement practice or anything else like that, that's going to shift how we spend our time, then we do have to pay a little bit more attention to creating the time and then knowing what you're going to do when you arrive at that space.
Yeah, having a plan, right?
Yeah, plan. Yep. And I know that you and I, Lisa, we had a moment, I guess a couple of months ago, where we were both kind of in this planning practice or dancing with planning. And we both were like, "Ooh, I don't like having a plan. It's too much structure. It doesn't feel free enough." And which is so interesting to me because, again, like that's what I coach my clients through. Like, if you want time in your day, you have to make time in your day. You have to plan, right? So how do you strike that balance between planning and the freedom that we all crave and want? Because if we could plan too much, our rebel hearts are going to go, no, we want to play.
Absolutely. Brendan Burchard talks about that the more you have a plan, the more freedom you actually are creating in your life.
Yeah.
Because he's like, then you have, you know what it is that you're working on, you're able to get it done and out of the way, and then there's this beautiful space left over for you to do whatever you wish with. Right?
So then the question becomes, Lisa, that beautiful time that's left over to do whatever you wish with, here's the self-love in that. What do you fill that up with? So many of us fill that up with more busy, right? More volunteering, more like, let me give my energy away. Because it's uncomfortable sometimes to say, I'm going to do this for myself. I'm going to sit outside in nature and not do a damn thing.
Yeah, well, on Sunday, I had the strangest thing happen. It was so bizarre. So my daughter went for a sleepover at her grandma and grandpa's.
Nice.
And my husband went to work. And I ended up with this evening, like an entire evening, 6-7 hours of time by myself. And I was like, really weirded out. I had to really fight to not message everybody I knew and get them to spend time with me because I was all alone. And I did, of course, what any sane person would do. I cleaned my house from top to bottom. And then I really settled into like, okay, should I watch Netflix? Because, that's a great use of time.
Mm-hmm.
Or
I use it that way often.
Right? Like, hey, everyone's talking about House of Cards season 4 is out, and I hadn't even watched an episode yet. So, like, why wouldn't I bust out that, right? There's whole 4 seasons to go through. And then I was like, well, okay. But I always say if I had more time, I'd want to journal more and I'd want to read more.
Right.
So what could I do there? And I said, okay, I'll set a timer. And I journaled for 10 minutes. And I read for 10 minutes, and then I ended up just reading a significant amount more and went to bed and fell asleep during House of Cards. But it was so like, what do you do? And the urge to busy yourself is just, man, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah. Especially if we're kind of in the busy space as a habit, right? Like that's our normal. And even though we may fantasize about, oh, I wish I had more time to journal, or I wish I just had time to sit and do nothing, or I wish I had time to garden, or whatever it is, we do get to that space where we're outside of the norm. We're outside of our typical busy schedule that we create. And yeah, it can be uncomfortable, and we can get into that now what space. So what I love about what you did, Lisa, which was a very loving thing to do for yourself, because sometimes we have to parent ourselves, right? And right, because as you're a parent, I'm a parent, and I parent my child in what I think is a very loving way, but sometimes she does not agree with that. Sometimes she might say, you're the worst mommy ever because you're making me clean my room, or whatever it is, right? So
I had that moment already today.
Right. So sometimes there are times where we have to show up for ourselves and say, okay, I'm going to put a 10-minute timer on, and I want you to do this thing that you've been saying that you want to do. And I'm not going to be like an authoritarian about it, and you have to do this, because that's no fun. That's not the energy that we want to show up with, right? but it is more, let's just try it for 10 minutes and see how it goes. And if you want to do something different after that, then great. But if you find that you're beginning to enjoy it, then we'll stick with that. So I love what you did there. That's so amazing because you showed up for yourself in a very loving way. You remembered what you want, right? So one of my favorite quotes is from David Campbell, and it says, "Discipline is remembering what you want."
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That ties into, what I used to, so P90X used to be my go-to for exercise. And I would go into what I call beast mode. Like I would get so excited to be working out. And then there would be days where I'd be like, damn, I'll just skip it. Have you ever been there? Have you ever been working? I know you mentioned you had a gym membership for a year. So I'm sure you've likely been there once or twice where you're like, I just, we could skip it. It'd be okay.
It's like, right, I'll do it tomorrow.
Twice tomorrow even. You ever make that bargain?
No, I've never made that bargain. That's awesome though.
Yeah, I've tried it. I've even kept my word, but like no one, if you don't want to work out once a day, twice a day is not doubly appealing, just so you know. But I would tell myself, like, okay, here's my deal. I told myself that I would show up and that I would work out. So, but I really don't want to work out. Yeah. I've heard that too. So I would tell myself, okay, we're going to get all dressed. We're going to put the mat out. We're going to put the DVD in. We're going to lace up our shoes. I'm going to get to my mat for 15 minutes, 15 minutes into my workout. And then I will, and then I have permission to just give it up, right? I can go home. I can do whatever I want that way. And
Whoops. Are you there? Hello? Oh, I think Lisa's coming back. I think she left us for a moment, but it looks like she's coming back.
I'm back. I don't even know where I lost. I was like standing and I'm like, when you're doing a radio show and you know that you're the one who dropped off the call and you're still talking out loud to yourself, that's awesome. So here, Julie, you probably had a train of thought going on and I'm going to let you roll with it. I'll stop interrupting.
Oh, no, I think you were talking to us about that permission that you would give so I'm actually curious to hear the end of the story. You had this bargain with yourself where you said, okay, I know I don't want to work out today, but I'm going to get dressed and I'm going to lace up my shoes and I'm going to show up. And then after 15 minutes, if I don't want to do it anymore, I don't have to. Was that effective for you? Because I use that a lot too.
Because then next thing you know, I'm happily working out and the DVD's over.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, man, I killed this workout.
Yeah. So I call that's actually part of one of my programs, and I call that like show up for yourself, and then we have an ellipses, and it says, and then lay down if you need to. So it's based on, I had a friend that taught yoga, and she would tell anybody that, oh, I've always wanted to try yoga, but I don't know, I don't have time, whatever, right? And she would always say, well, just show up to class, and if you need to lay down for the whole class, you can lay down through the whole class. And so that made a huge difference for many people because they had this permission. All you have to do is get there. And then if you're really, really tired, like that's what you need. Do that. Go for it. Right? But most of the time, people would at least get through the warm up, if not the whole class.
Absolutely. I've done that in yoga. I've used that same thing. Okay. What would my win look like? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, showing up to class, sometimes that's the win. Remembering to breathe all the way through it. That's another win, you know? Okay. I only had to lay down through half of it because I was doing a 90-minute flow in a hot yoga studio, but I still showed up. So yeah, that technique's really effective for that and for cleaning the house. I set the timer for 15 minutes. I clean as hard as I can for 15 minutes, and I set the timer for 15 more minutes, and I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
During that 15 minutes. So
it's an amazing process of just like, I'm going to I'm going to remember what it is that I want, right? And I'm going to show up for that. And I have permission to quit whenever, whatever, 10 minutes or after I pick up 10 things or whatever it is. And then I think so I teach Qigong and Tai Chi, which for me is remembering the energy of yin and yang, remembering the energy of stillness and motion, feminine and masculine, all of these like balanced energies. And so the flip side of that I think is important in a self-love practice too, is knowing your true yes and your true no. So if we put our value with always being in motion or always working towards a goal or always, showing up in one particular way, it looks like a particular way, we miss the nuance, which is sometimes where our body is telling us, no, our body is telling us you don't feel well, or what you really need most in this moment is to not be around people to conserve your energy, or whatever that might be. Because sometimes our system is telling us, no, it's not time to show up, or it's time to show up in a different way and to make it look a different way than what you had been making it look like. It's time to let your house cleaning go for a little while and to actually go sit outside and do nothing, right? So tuning into that intuition, into that true yes and true no in your body, and knowing like, what's the best way that I can show up for myself right now? What does it look like?
Yes. So how do you know? Because how do you know when you're sitting at a true yes? What does it show up like for you?
For me, my true yes shows up, and for everybody, I just want to preface this by saying it shows up for everybody a little bit differently. And so this is why it can be really worth it to have a mindfulness practice where you're doing a body scan, where you're tuning into your body. Because then you can develop this relationship with your body where you understand your body's cues. But my true yes feels like it almost feels like I'm leaning towards something, like I'm being led by my heart towards something. So it feels very expansive in my heart, and it feels almost as if my heart is leaning toward that thing that I'm considering. And for me, my true yes goes off all the time, because I like I said, I love learning and I love new experiences, and I love getting to try new things. And so my true no is actually my most important tool, because I might be, there might be a part of me that's super excited about the potential to do this thing that I want to do, but there's a part of me that's going, it's not the right time for whatever reason. You've got too much on your plate right now. You're not going to be able to really focus on it. You need to do this instead, whatever it is. So for me, it's my true no, which feels like it feels sometimes, honestly, it feels like procrastination. I've had to really make friends with procrastination. I used to beat myself up all the time. Oh my gosh, you procrastinate so much. I can't believe how much you procrastinate. But what I'm realizing is that my procrastination, as I make friends with it, is tied to my true no.
So how on earth did you make friends with procrastination? And I know we only have a few minutes left, but like this, maybe we need to have a whole other show. I don't know.
Yeah, we can do that.
Procrastination and I hang out a lot. but I can't say that we're besties. You'd think we are, the amount of time we spend together. But
yeah, I was spending a lot of time with procrastination too. I love that you asked this question because I think that this applies to procrastination. I think it applies to anxiety. It applies to depression. It applies to anything that you feel like you are locked in battle with. Right? And so paying attention to our languaging sometimes is a really good way to key into that. Like, oh, I'm fighting procrastination, or I'm really battling my anxiety, or, I wish I could win against depression, or whatever languaging that it might be that creates that separation between this thing that you're not jazzed about, procrastination in this case, and feeling like you have to overcome it in some way. And what I found is that those things keep showing up in your life to give you some kind of a message. So for me, it was stepping out of that battle with procrastination and just really accepting that it's there for a reason and getting curious about it. So this is where that turning inward mindfulness practice. So it's not always a body scan that I do. Sometimes it is like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to anthropomorphize or embody procrastination. I'm going to let it take form. I'm going to invite it to tea, and I'm going to get quiet in my mind and I'm going to ask it, what are you here to tell me? What are you here to tell me? I want to know. I want to hear you. I want to see you. And it's amazing. Like, you think sometimes that it might be really difficult to come to an answer, but oftentimes if it's hanging out with you a lot, it'll tell you what it's there for. So anxiety might be telling you, slow down, you've got too much on your plate. Or depression might be telling you, it's time to start taking care of yourself in a really loving way. And I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm just saying those are some possible things. So have you tried that, Lisa? Have you tried inviting procrastination over for tea?
yeah, and sometimes a shot of bourbon too.
Yeah, sure. Whatever works.
And usually what it is that, we're uncomfortable with this. If we do this, then this can happen. So then we end up having to play the what if game, run it all the way out to the end, and then look at where we're at from there. So
right. So it sounds like procrastination is really trying to protect you.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And we've had many conversations around this, you and I,
Yep.
about all the ways that I try to protect myself. So
yeah, well, we all want to feel safe, right?
Right. It's a form of self-love. Just
yes.
Maybe it's not one that's widely recognized.
Exactly. And that goes back to that. Like, it's a radical practice, right? We're doing this even when it's difficult and even when it's not comfortable.
Yeah. And when you say radical, I think that I should be able to have face paint on.
Right? Sometimes it feels like that.
And carry a pitchfork even. I don't know, but I'm up in arms with my radical self-love here.
It's that warrior spirit, right? That peaceful warrior spirit. Yeah, totally.
Absolutely. That's another book that I have that I would love to read. It's on my list. Peaceful Warrior.
Yeah, I haven't read it either.
Oh, maybe we need to book club it or
book
something.
Club. Yeah.
So, could you tell me what amazing things you've got on the go right now?
I think the most amazing thing right now that I've got going on is the Facebook group, which is the Self-Love Tent. And this is kind of my launching pad, is the Self-Love Tent. And it is the place where I like to give sneak peeks to the people who are really into this idea of radical self-love. So one of the things that I've promised to myself is that I'm going to write 4 blogs on self-love this month. And the Self-Love Tent is the easiest. So it's a Facebook group. All you have to do is search the Self-Love Tent, request to join, and I'll add you to the group. But that's going to be the easiest place to find these blogs. on self-love, and it's going to be a variety of topics. I've been going into different Facebook groups and asking the question, what do you want to hear about? So hopefully these will be very much of value around this topic. And then I'm always open to hearing other people's ideas and inspirations. Other than that, I usually, run some free groups or free, I don't like to call them challenges. So the last one that I had was a self-love fest. And we had 3 days where we did 3 videos that came to you with some self-love practices that you can do. So I've always got something like that going on. But again, the self-love tent is the best way to sort of keep up with all the things that are going on. And then, of course, I do private coaching. So if you are feeling it, and you want to go the distance and you want to really cultivate your self-love practice, I have 3 tiers available, an introductory, a mid-level, and a high-end program that I'd love to have a chat with you about. And in fact, we can actually have a Love You breakthrough call, and that's where we just take one area of your life where you're feeling particularly challenged, and I'll ask you what the challenges are. I'll ask you what you've tried before, and then we'll together come up with a plan of your best next step, right? We'll break it down. Here's what I see just for the next week. Try this, see what happens, right? So that's an option too, and you can. I usually have that link to book that call in the self-love tent, so you can definitely head on over there if you want to do that. You can find me on Facebook very easily.
And if you're listening to this and you're even hemming and hawing about it, just do that. Go join the self-love tent. Make sure that you say yes to Julie's offer to take her up on the Love You breakthrough call, because, man, a conversation with Julie always leaves you feeling better, giving you great insight, and you walk away with amazing tools. You've heard, in fact, last week on my show and probably the week before, I was even talking about her. And, when you're having a rough day or it feels like you're kind of stuck in a rut and the same patterns going on, then you just bust out some trickster medicine and be like, until now. Yeah. And it just shifts the energy and everything. It's honestly one of my most favorite tools. I talk about it in everything that I do. And I love awesome, that. Isn't it? And I absolutely love Julie. So please take her up on her opportunity to connect or her offer to connect, because, man, it's a game changer. And if you let it can be a life changer too. So make sure that you do that. Any last words about self-love that you want to share with us?
Any last words about self-love? Yeah, I do actually have some last words about self-love. When we decide to take on this journey of self-love, it is a sacred journey. It is such a sacred journey that it's been written about for thousands of years. Our myths and our fairy tales are all tales of a self-love journey that people have taken, or that, gods and goddesses have taken, or Snow White or Little Red Riding Hood or any of that. It's such a sacred journey that it's written about, and it's in our DNA. And we're all meant to take this sacred journey at some point in our lives. And sometimes it can feel a little bit like we're breaking apart, or we're having a breakdown, or we don't know what's going on. It can feel like you're being drugged down into the underworld like Persephone, right? But if you let it, and you can find the proper support, because everybody that's gone into the forest or gone into the underworld has always had a buddy. We're meant to have a buddy. We're meant to not do this alone. Then it can be one of the most amazing, beautiful, fulfilling, and joyful practices that you can do.
I love it. Woohoo! Julie, thank you so much for joining me today. I absolutely love our time together, and I'd love to have you back on the show again so we can talk more about self-love and bring out some new tools or some more tools that you love and that you find to be big changers for yourself and your clients, and talk a little bit more about how to create a practice around it. But in the meantime, like I said, find Julie on Self-Love Tent on Facebook. Just search for it. She will add you to the group. It's a beautiful, loving, warm space. And take her up on her breakthrough call, because it's so worthwhile. And then if you want to connect with me further, because you're curious what the hell I'm all about, please go to rebelhearted.com, or you can search Rebel Hearted Women on Facebook as well and be able to find us there. It's a fun little community as well. So until next time, I wish you a day as absolutely beautiful as you. And I look forward to talking to you next week, where I have a mystery school teacher joining us, and it's going to be an exciting call. So have a great week, everyone. We'll talk to you next week, same time, same channel. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us on the Rebel Hearted Radio Show. Is your wild child still left wanting more? Contact Lisa further at rebelhearted.com and step into your rebel-hearted self.